My name is Stephen Shapiro. I'm the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I probably have been on the Leslie campus before any of you ever were, because my first 9 months were living in Shepherd Street, an apartment with my parents. Obviously, I wasn't living alone at that time. And it was right between Porter campus and Doble campus. So I'm sure I was pushed around in a stroller or something on the Leslie campus a long time ago. And my sister is an alum of Leslie, so I have a connection there as well. And I've been here since 2016. And I'm just so pleased to have this group of alumni here. I listened to some of their stories yesterday, and they're just incredibly impressive. I'm just thrilled to be here and thrilled to be part of the legacy that Leslie has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a general question that each of the panelists will respond to, and then we'll continue with other questions and then entertain questions from the audience as well. So I'm interested in each of you first introducing yourselves briefly and sharing some special moment you remember when you were at Leslie and how it defined some part of your future. What really impacted you in your Leslie experience, and how did that translate into some future experience in your career or personal lives?
I'm Cicely Peru. If you move this around, you'll be answering. Okay. Hi, Zoom. I was at LA+D. And one of the defining moments for me was in a seminar with Makita Best. And she said, I want you to think outside of the box and remember that the institution is not, it's not the goal. Ironically, I'm like deeply embedded in the institution after that, like in museums and galleries and whatnot. But she was like, the path is not straight and narrow. You have to define it for yourself. You have to be imaginative. You cannot focus on the museum because that's where your work goes to die. And that sounds bleak, but I think for me, it reminded me to be present with what's happening, to not think of a destination, but just be part of the journey, and stay open to surprise, and say a lot of yeses, and then remember that like anything's possible, and I just have to keep practicing. So as long as I keep my hands moving and stay open, that things will come. And I'm grateful that they have. But that's what happened.
Can you talk just what first do a brief introduction?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing now? What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2020 in January, just before the pandemic. I'm a full-time artist now. Hallelujah. And, a full-time mom. Oh my God. And since then I've been in public art installations and gallery exhibitions and museum exhibitions and group exhibitions. And so I get to practice and play full-time. Yes.
This question kind of overstimulating. So my mind was like fast moving. I was like, which one should I pick? So Wen Hao Tian, Tian Wen Hao, depending on what culture you came from. But so I'm Wen Hao Tian. I have, in terms of education, I started in science, and then I learned social studies, Asia study, international relations, but meanwhile, I was always doing art. And I came back to Leslie to get an MFA to consolidate my thoughts. And it's been wonderful. So what I'm doing, I quit my day job. I was the assistant director for Party School Global Study at Boston University. Did I say assistant director? Yeah, it sounded pretty big, right? I quit. And I teach in the art and design department in UMass Law. was an adjunct and also is being teaching at BU, Boston University, through the World Language and Literature department, actually, quite an interdisciplinary department. So it's great. Overstimulating. I'm an artist and learning. This year I start to be paid to to do project, and we're just discussing how tricky that really was as well. So so it's new chapter is keep my mind very busy and very occupied. So the defining moment at lastly, there's so many, but I want to say one. Provided that I studied in science and humanity study, any kind you can think of, art and art education is the first place I experienced that I welcome to use my first person voice. And it taught me how to be critical and think critically. That's the biggest gift in my education at lastly MFA program. And throughout the residencies, you can hear people exercise their critical voice. And I find that being one of the most interesting and important education in my entire life. And I never left school. Okay, know that. I don't want to tell you how old I am, but I have never left school since I was 3. So, but MFA studying art taught me how to speak in a very critical way. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janice DiLorenzo. I graduated Leslie Graduate School in 78. Undergraduate at University of Rhode Island in 70. So I've been around. 3 states, 17 principals, 3 that I think were worth noting. So an indication of things to come today. But I've taught everything from always teenagers. I might be the only human being that loves teenagers, but there you go. Middle school and high school, but mostly high school. I always chose to change schools, change what I taught. I've taught everything from, I got my master's in special ed. At the time was LDBD, behavior disordered, which I specialized in. So I got the worst middle schoolers ever. And it was such a learning experience. It prepares you. Someone said, how can you speak in front of a crowd so easily? I said, try standing in front of behavior disordered middle school kids every day. And that's training right there. And it was so easy after that. I said, sitting in front of a group of adult professionals, the worst thing they're going to do is fall asleep. I've ducked desks coming over my head, but that's all, whatever. But I've taught AP Lit was my last gig, which I loved. And I needed it. I needed to go out on a positive feedback kind of situation. I did that in leadership, which was student government. I taught the freshmen and sophomore, my cohort, my friend, Joe taught juniors and seniors, and it was student government. And these kids go on to do amazing things. But I was just telling Amy, but the girls still talk like this. And it would drive me nuts because they were leaders and they went through this whole thing. So, and then I had the kids who couldn't read and they would never read. I taught, despite what the guy from Harvard says, I taught one student, I'll never forget him, and I told you this story too. He couldn't pass the act to get a Division I. He was a great football player, which is huge in Florida. That was where I ended up. I taught in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Florida. And it broke my heart. I tutored him every afternoon during lunch. I would try to get him to pass that ACT to the level where he could get into a college and be okay with NCAA rules. And he never could make it. And I knew he was just going to go to these junior colleges. They have them out west in the Southwest, take kids for 2 years, have them play a sport, and then they send them out to dry. And I broke my heart, but I couldn't do anything about it. And I taught some of the brightest kids. One kid went to MIT, started a business 2 years later, and he already sold it, and he's not even 30 yet. So I've seen the gamut, but they were all teenagers, and I loved it. But I wasn't passionate about my job. I was passionate about human beings. Learned that at Leslie and myself. But the defining moment for me at Leslie, which I think I've told people the story, and it was huge, just in general. When we were in the graduate program, you had to take a practicum. Because I was already working, I could do it at Leslie in the summer program. And I had 6 kids, and one of the kids was in a wheelchair. He had a debilitating genetic disease. And Leslie also made us do parent groups. And if you can ever have any of your students do a parent group, parents who lost children at birth from genetic diseases, all kinds of stuff. It made such an impact on me to see these people who were positive. This woman had 1 baby born with 3, and I have to go to the support group once a week for like 6 weeks. It was amazing. And it changed my life in the sense that whenever I saw somebody in a wheelchair who couldn't do something, I'd say, of course you can do it. You still have to do your homework, because I saw this person with 3 babies born without brains. The babies died between 0 and 18 months. She went back and she had a 4th child who was on the swim team at Harvard. That made such an impression on me. She was so positive. How can I ever be negative about someone's ability or lack of ability when I remember that mother who had the strength to keep going and keep doing it, and could say to us, I have a child who's alive and well and doing phenomenal. And then another mother with 4 kids in a wheelchair, genetic disease again. The family car was a motorized van. How can anybody complain after that? So Leslie gave me that opportunity to see beyond ability and negativity. And that was that humanistic. And I think if they don't do that now, they still should do that. That's an amazing opportunity. So.
All right. Hey, family. How y'all doing? I'm Craig Martin. I'm a Southerner, from New Orleans, Louisiana. I actually, there are a number of things that come to mind and surface for me when I think about my Leslie University experience. But what I think about, there's a couple of really interesting moments at Leslie. So I got my master's degree in 2007. I got it in education leadership. I chosen Leslie specifically because being a Southerner, we're very dramatic and musical in our food and our entertainment. In New Orleans, if you've ever been there, I mean, you don't have to tell the stories, but many times people, really appreciate the Southern hospitality and the artistry of things. And I wanted to go to an institution where I wasn't, and I'm going to say something that hopefully doesn't feel offensive, I just didn't want to work for a curriculum company. And so many times, many of the master's degree programs that were available at the time were, all right, you're going to go ahead and you're going to build out a curriculum. You're going to build a textbook. And I'm like, that's cute, but that's not for me. And so coming to Leslie, I knew that I would be able to experience great training in how to make magic with molecules. And so one of my classes, Action Research, I had the privilege and honor of integrating sciences in hip hop. And be able because that's definitely part of my tradition and growing up and what I love. A little Sugar Hill goes a long way, but now the kids love a little Cardi B and more, and a little Lizzo, depending on what it is. And what I wanted to do is make sure that our young people felt like they were seen. They needed to know that they were seen. And so how could I integrate a lot of what felt rich for them in culture and be able to create that in the classroom? Because at the same time I was getting my master's, I also was a technology specialist. And I had the opportunity to teach digital storytelling from young people who are 5 all the way up to those 5th graders who think they were paying a mortgage. And so for me, being able to experience action research, which was the only B I earned at Leslie University, because Dr. Ziegler was very much on us about citations and, making sure we have good qualitative and quantitative data points. That was super important. And so knowing I had the opportunity to integrate an experience that helped me to build my training in the use of artistry, the use of digital tech, ed tech, and then also being able to take advantage of integrating trauma-informed practices as well, because many of the young people I continue to serve to this day have incredible odds, but culturally, they bring so much to the table. And so with some of the challenges they face, Leslie also helped us to integrate a lot of the great psychology approaches and strategies, a lot of the social skills work, and that's been powerful. One of the other moments that I'll speak of that was magical for me was Dr. President Moore at the time actually said to me, "Hey, Craig, why don't you bring your kids to school? Bring them to Leslie." I'm like, "You ain't said nothing but a word. Like, let me bring all 25 of my fifth graders to Leslie," because I'm like, their lens many times came through me. So what was possible was actually was architected by the environment I created for them. And so when they had an opportunity to come here to Leslie University, they got a tour of campus. But what they loved so much was having lunch with President Moore and being in the big conference room when the president's office was right down the road where the library used to be, for people who didn't know, and the gym was as well. But them actually having an opportunity to have uninterrupted time with the president inspired so many of them to choose colleges and universities as a destination. The chicken tenders at that time also did not, that actually made them even happier as well. And they could have as many chicken tenders as they wanted, because at the time there was a kitchen over there. So for me, and the final thing, a year ago, I reconnected with one of my scholars who was in that class that met President Moore, and he reached out to me on LinkedIn. I'm like, God, I'm old. But he said, "You may not know, but that moment that you brought us to school and we got to actually go to Leslie is the reason why I'm in college now." And so for me, what Leslie has represented, not just for me, but also for all of those who are carrying dreams about what is possible, it helped to birth their own reality, which now is inclusive of them coming to Leslie or going to other institutions that are going to continue to build them out to be great young people of the world. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Sue Marchioni, and I graduated in the year of 2014 from the counseling psychology program. And I currently work as a perinatal mental health clinician. So perinatal is birth to 3 years postpartum. And I always knew that that was what I wanted to do, because I had postpartum when I was very young. And I went to school later because I raised 3 children and knew I wanted to somehow help women in this period of their lives. And a friend of mine said, "Why don't you try going back to school and being a therapist?" I thought, well, where do I do that? So did some research, had my meeting with my advisor, Sue Matulski, who was unbelievable. And I went in, I was very nervous. I was, I think, 45 years old, and I'm listening to how long this is going to take me. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I didn't, when I was in school, I didn't use a computer. I didn't even know what PowerPoint was. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And she sat with me. And, one of the other things that I was nervous about was people at my age have already been in a career for a long time. So here I am going to get out of school. I can't even tell you what age. And I have to start. Am I going to be relevant? And Sue said to me, "Your life experience is going to make you great at what you want to do in this field. You're a mother of 3. You've experienced this. You are going to bring to the table elements that, you know, younger students, 21, 22, who are in a grad program might not have experienced yet. And I thought about that and talk about CBT. It reframed my thinking, and I thought, wow, I can actually bring something to other students. And that made me feel, okay, I think I can do this. But that for me, as going back to school as an older student, it just changed the whole way I looked at it. And with Leslie's philosophy, you know, you bring yourself into your work. Well, her comment, and then with the philosophy of Leslie throughout my schooling, it was like, yes, you do. And because this was my one track, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew who I wanted to work with. That was very important to me also as a mother. And just, you know, my kids always thought, Mom, that's pretty powerful that you did that. And it was very inspiring. And yesterday we talked to an alum, Merle, and she had said she felt stupid and was told she was stupid. I had that same experience as a young learner. And so Leslie gave me this opportunity to feel smart and feel like I had something to offer and feel like I could do some good work with what had happened to me. So that is my story of Leslie.
Hi, everybody. And hi, family. I like that. And I love teenagers too. That was great. So many connections happening here, which is just inspiring. It started on Zoom yesterday with all of us, but so much better in 3D. I'm Lauren Hamilton, and I work very close by. I work at the Belmont Hill School, and it's an all-boys school. We actually graduated today, 7th grade to 12th grade. And I've been there 28 years, and I feel so blessed because it actually introduced me to Leslie. So I'll get to that in a minute. But I was hired as a one-year intern. Whoops. And here we are several decades later. And like so many of you have worn many different hats. I've been grateful that I've been able to wear different hats. Every time I got antsy and wanted to try something new, I was able to do it at a school that I love and am invested in the goal there. And I've taught 7th grade to 12th grade, and English class and history class. And for the last 12 years, I've been the director of the middle school. So I get to work with 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. And I'm switching roles next year to Dean of Teaching and Learning, where I'll still teach, but my goal will be to help the new educators that join us, the new legends, the new superheroes. So I'm excited about that. My Leslie story is, I was very grateful that a couple years into my career at Belmont Hill, I was fortunate enough that they would fund graduate work for me. And part of that was finding a program that I could work full time and also pursue my master's. And I was just so impressed hearing about all the different stories, all the different programs that Leslie offers. It meets people at different stages in their lives so they can figure out, how can I make this work? I want to continue to be a learner. I want to continue to grow. How can I do that by, balancing everything else going on in my life? So I didn't get to come to campus. I was at a satellite every other weekend. So sort of intense, Friday nights, all night long, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And it took about 2.5 years. And one of the things I'm grateful for, and I'm still in contact with a few, is there happened to be 14 of us, and it was all women. And I think I mentioned at Belmont Hill, it's an all boys school. So this was sort of my escape a little bit. Not that I love my male colleagues, my female colleagues, but just to have this female cohort was really super fun. And it also was a time in my life where I was beginning my family. I was explaining that I finished my presentation on December 10th. So the final project I had to do for my master's, and my son was born 3 days later. So he did what he was told to do, is to wait. But one of the projects I had to do, and I've heard people talk about how they felt seen, they felt heard, they were allowed to use their first person voice, is I got to dive into it. Almost felt selfish that here I was studying and gaining my master's degree, but I was doing things that I had put on hold for a while. I love to sing. Music's a big part of my life. And one of the projects, it was curriculum theory and creative arts and learning. I was able to, as I was, my son was growing, I was able to write my own lullabies and produce my own CD. And that counted for class credit. And, you know, and it's now something that I have and my son listened to and, you know, hopefully will pass along. But that was just incredible. That was just one example of something that it was a gift to me because I got to just be Lauren, what Lauren loves to do in the moment. And then what I also loved is they knew that everyone in that program was working full time. All the homework, all the assignments, you brought right back to your classroom. I loved that. Like, go back and try a project, come in and tell us how it went. Get student voices to come in and tell you how it went. Being at a school that allowed me to do that, saying, okay, I'm going to ask the whole history department to join me in this. We're going to try this lesson plan that I've just done. That was amazing. And again, it just felt so. Every time I left class or left with a certain assignment that I had, it felt so real and relevant, and I could take the skills we were talking about and use them the next Monday in class. And I don't know if there's all programs are like that. I doubt it. So that was certainly, you know, something that I'm forever grateful for. And now today, here's my other Leslie story. This is just cool. Meeting these people. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. I'm John Cuna. I graduated 2013 from the clinical mental health counseling program, school and community specialization. My story. So when I was 5, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go back that far. So I would say that, kind of kidding, but I would say that my Leslie story or significance is sort of related. I grew up, I have ADHD, and I went to a town where if you weren't getting straight A's, you weren't relevant to them. And so throughout my entire early childhood education, I just adopted this understanding that I was stupid, not enough, you know, something we're hearing some similar trends here. And when I came to Leslie, it was the first time I felt as if I was a learner and capable. And I really, really ran with that. And I just, that feeling or that sensation of like feeling at home, family is a perfect way to describe it, because it felt like family. And when you run into other alumni from Leslie, it's like this instant connection and spark that you're like, okay, I know I can be myself. I can have my first person voice on. I can feel seen. I can feel heard. Because for a long portion of my life, I didn't have that experience. And Leslie really showed me what that actually felt like, which allowed me to just fully engage in my learning. And, you know, I kidded about being 5, but from when I remember, I'd always wanted to be in a position where I could help people. And at the time that meant like teacher. And so a lot of my life was like, no, you can't do that. You can't be a teacher. You can't be you can't be a provider and teacher. You can't make enough money. And we'll get to that later on in the talks about that. But I just sort of understood that, and that became my reality. And I came away from what felt authentic to me until finally pulling up the courage, graduating from my undergraduate, sitting at commencement. Can't even tell you who it was that was talking at the time. And just being like, holy crap, what am I going to do? I don't want to be a therapist. I took psychology because the classes felt relevant to me and I enjoyed them. It like connected to me. But that was my first thought, sitting in the chair, trying to pay attention to whoever it was that was talking and being like, well, I have a psych degree, but I don't want to be a therapist and don't want to do that work, because I still was continuously rejecting that part of myself. And it just took me a lot of, I know we all went to Leslie, so I can say self-reflection openly here, but it took a lot of self-reflection for me to be able to get to that point where I was allowed to just be myself and allow that self to finally come out and be seen. And Leslie was the part where I actually was allowed to engage with that. Which is why anytime Leslie's like, hey, John, would you mind coming and helping out? Or we'd love to do this. Or, hey, I've got someone who's interested in doing this. I'm like, yep, how can I help? Because, I loved my experience at undergrad, but I could care less, to be honest. But anytime Leslie comes calling for support, I'm always willing to do that, because of it. It launched not just my career and gave me the skills, certainly, but it affirmed an identity that I'd rejected pretty much my entire life, which was really powerful for me. And then being in the position that I'm in now, I'm able to understand that experience and try to help my clients now get to a part where they can feel themselves. And that lesson was given to me very clearly from my time here at Leslie.
So I guess just open it up to see if there's any questions, and then we'll probably loop back to some of the topics we talked about yesterday. But is there any questions from the audience? Thank you so much, by the way. That was amazing. And there's such a consistency in a thread
throughout each story and each presentation. So I really appreciate that. Yes, Jonathan. Oh, real quick. President Steinmeier, welcome. Provost Jefferson, welcome. Oh, and we have our deans here too. So there's 4 deans, if or 3 can stand up. No, okay. It's very informal, but okay, go ahead, Jonathan. Sorry. Sorry.
No, you all talk about.
Great.
And we go to open up. Thinking back on your university experience, what do you wish would have been done?
I'm always like the first one, because I was a teacher, and the worst thing that happened to a teacher is dead silent.
We love silence.
So I,
I love it.
which I was okay with,
Yeah.
but it made everybody else uncomfortable. I think the reality of public school teaching, when you're at Leslie, you're in a bubble. When you're in Cambridge, you're in a bubble. When you're in Massachusetts, you're in a bubble. When you're in New England, you're in a bubble. And now go to Florida, go to the South. I taught in 3 states, and I can compare. And I'm living through, I don't teach anymore, I retired 8 years ago, but I'm living through the horror of politics and education, which happens everywhere, but you're here and you're not paying attention to there, and it impacts you. Here I was at Leslie, very confident in my teaching ability. It was 1978. They just finished 94-142, which was the special ed law that became, what is they call, I forget what they call it now, IDEA. Leslie wrote 94-142. I don't know if anybody knew that. Chapter 94, is that 140? It had in numbers. I knew all the numbers because Leslie was involved in writing that first special ed law. I don't think anybody knew that, which became IDEA. But I think they were the only people who knew about it. Even though it was government law, I ultimately went to Florida, and I'm teaching, and people are ripping up IEPs. I was like in shock. People were doing things. They were writing the IEPs and have the parents sign them. There was I can't tell you, it's many egregious things I've seen. What could I do? So I called the state. The principal went nuts. How could you call the state? The one thing I always had, there was a street sense. I grew up in the white suburbs, but I always had a street sense. And I would take on a persona. They were like, I'm good because I've got the law behind me. So what are they going to do to me ultimately? And I would challenge the principal. And she said, why did you call the state? You should come to me. Why can I come to you? You know, this is going on and it's happening all around me. Nothing I can do about it. And people got jobs above me who were not qualified because they had no knowledge of the law. They didn't enforce the law. They didn't have the guts to go against the people who were breaking the law. And it's very difficult. And I don't know how a beginner teacher would handle that. They would just be silent and go with the flow. And sooner or later, they become the person who does the wrong thing. And that's common. That is not an aberration. That's happening everywhere. Rights are being violated. Children are being violated through lack of strength to help them. There's laws in place to help kids at every level, but you have to be willing to put yourself on the line. And that reality is something you learn as you go, my opinion. It's not something I learned here. The best thing that happened to me in Boston was I had a sub in inner city Boston for 6 months before I could get a job because jobs were at a premium. I was tear gassed on lunch duty. I was like, oh my God, what's that? Oh no, they got the tear gas from the Solomon Lewinburg when we had, forced busing and everybody was rioting. The kids stole the tear gas. So I get a job in the suburbs after that, and the superintendent who we would interview with said to me, how would you feel if kids were throwing spitballs behind your back? I was like, spitballs, I'd be happy. I didn't say that, but that was 20 miles down the road. That's how out of touch they are. And I don't think that in this bubble of great, feeling good, doing the right thing, that we're preparing kids for what's out there and the jobs they're going to have to take to put food on the table and things they're going to have to put up with, things they might see. It's a learn as you go operation. And they can collapse under that pressure. I've seen friends of mine who taught at Boca High, which is a nice high school, crying because of the pressure now. What do I do? And I said, you could either quit or stick it out, but you need some help. And
Well, this is a perfect time for, no, I'm not cutting you off, but I do want, Lauren talked about this yesterday. I mean, it's teeing you up to what you are feeling very convicted about.
Yeah, fascinating hearing your story. I guess I was mentioning on Zoom the other day, as I think about, first of all, hats off to anyone that wants to go into the field of education. Bravo,
yeah.
bravo, all around. And because it's needed more than ever. Again, I'm coming fresh off of a graduation, and our speaker today was talking about how we were blessed, and all of our boys that were graduating today, we have all boys. It was, you were able to go to this great school. And the problem with the world is we need thousands and thousands of more great schools and great educators. And so here's a beginning start of that. But how to make sure that you are supported and commended and encouraged and inspired and supported again when you choose this path, because it's not an easy one. All of our youth are in such a scary world, as are we, but when you go into education, first and foremost, your students come first. And it's just, how do we support new educators? Because we were talking yesterday that it's not just about teaching geometry or, where the subject is in the sentence. It's about making sure that that student, like we all felt, that student is seen and heard, and we understand what is that invisible backpack they're carrying in every day with them. We're asked to be therapists, even if we're not trained, right? Is this person healthy and safe? And how do if I can't help them, where do I go to find the help to help them? And I worry too often that when people join new schools, and some schools are gonna have more support than others, what is that like? And how do you prevent the person from quitting because after the day of crying, right? And it might be because they don't have the support around them. I had this happen to me in class today, or I'm worried about this student and I don't think I can help them. Where can I find the help for them? That can feel so overwhelming. There's a sense of responsibility already when you become a teacher. I think it's even stronger now and more important. So I think that's what we were sort of talking about a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited that there's more people that want to be teachers. You just gotta, make sure you feel supported.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we talked yesterday too, how going into teaching too is not going to be one of those environments where many of your, I'm thinking about people that are just entering the workforce. It's not going to be a place where you can work from home on Mondays and Fridays. And so that's been a challenge of attracting people to the profession because, we know that it's better for the students if you're there Monday through Friday, in person 3D. And so that's hard too, of making sure, yes, come do this great work. It is so rewarding, but you're going to have to get up every day and come.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Does someone else want to respond to Jonathan's question?
Yeah, I can answer that too,
Okay.
from just from our department too. One would be, and I don't know if it's slightly related, but I would say that like some sense of entrepreneurial design or exposure, I would say within the mental health field currently, it's like explosive right now. And we're in a real shift in how therapists are approaching the work, how clients are accessing the work. So some support around giving freedom to engage in conversations or designing programs or thinking outside of the box about how we can be treating our clients from a singular level, but also from more of like a community-based part. I would have loved to have had more exposure to that because I'm a very creative person. So that would have been a nice experience to do. And then just mirroring what everyone else has talked about, that I think we, in the mental health field, also educators, it's an insanely difficult profession, especially when you graduate. That I think sometimes is taken for granted in terms of like what we are doing. We are holding children and kids and supporting them and what that looks like. And that's hard. And so I would definitely would have liked to have had, even more understanding of like, where are the supports that I can get outside of this? How do I access them? That would have been really helpful because I would have loved to have been able to find someone that's been through it before versus just like scouring. LinkedIn was like a brand new thing, but like scouring LinkedIn or trying to find someone that like did similar work to me and cold calling. It would have been nice to have some exposure to like, hey, this person did this 10 years ago and has some experience, like go and talk to that person about what this is like. Or yeah, it's really sucky in the first couple of years after you graduate and you don't have your licensure yet. And what does that look like? What spaces should you go to? What spaces should you look out for? What can you be asking for in these interviews versus just taking what's available? I think there wasn't enough of that. That would have been really helpful for people, so that clinicians could felt like, okay, I have a little bit of control over where I go, what I'm doing, at least at the very beginning after graduation.
What about our artists?
I just thought about something. It's not so much of what the time during at Leslie. Everybody's doing their best, the faculty, everything. But so Cecily, I'm sure we both agree that alumni relations among us are very, very strong, but it's private. We really needed each other. So as an artist, practicing artist, when you get out of school, who is there to create this piece and go through the artist process? And so art is a tool to educate in an informal way to the general public is very needed and very powerful. I felt we're all educators. No, I don't have a post, still to teach, but I think my own artwork, I see that being a very, whether involve the public in part of the process and, art, Leslie has an art scene. Leslie and May Bay has an art scene, our local art scene. It's different than the museum school. It's different than this tough school. We're very clear about what's our art scene. We have a very strong social voice. And so we needed so much of each other. And I just think continuously to recognize alumni is very connected to the school because it's our scene. And somehow we started already, this year, the Leslie Art Plus Everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a new thing. It rhymes. I don't know, no rhymes or not, but it's Leslie Art Plus Everywhere. We started already. But I'm just asking everyone's support because it is a very, very strong group. We are really connected and we're really, somehow we all recognize that if we help each other, we're all in this together. It's we don't see a lot of jealousy among each other. We're very close to each other.
That's
So
wonderful.
this is like after school, I'm asking them, we have the big guys here. Big guys here to recognize the alums on the MFA is very, very important.
I will piggyback on that and in terms of validating us. I'm proud of here. It's important, and especially as artists, a point of validation.
This is not totally popular to say, and I'm totally participating in capitalism, but is to get paid for what you do. And there's a big price to pay for your MFA when there's no guarantee that anything will come of it, unless you dive right into teaching. And that's fine. That's good. That's why we're here. But I feel like if there could be some opportunity for the MFA students, perhaps the graduates, to come back and participate in its panels or mentorship or just something where you're staying connected and giving to the next generation, but also being seen in a monetary form for that, to say it's not easy to get paid to do what you do, but we see you, we recognize you, and you have gifts to contribute that matter here. And we all like money.
Yeah.
I don't know enough to beg for it, but I feel like that's something that's not hard to do, but can be good. Could I say something to piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Just as I think a lot of us are entrepreneurs. And so to have some business component to, if you want to start your own business, what do you need, what you need to think about? Especially those of us in mental health, how to get contracted with insurance companies, like just the real nitty gritty of building a business. Because I had no idea what to do or how to do it. May have made many mistakes, hopefully not, but I just felt very, very alone and very sort of good luck. And you know, did it, but it was up to me to find the resources. It sounds like everyone's saying, where are the resources? And if Leslie could be a resource, that would be very helpful to people just starting out.
So there are a couple of things. One, I think we help each other out. And this is how we help each other out. One is yes, we must get on that. So that's not. And so we can get in the classroom. That's one. And I think the way we help each other out in that way is it is sometimes hard for a 20, 21-year-old, or even a 27 or 28-year-old in the mental health space to know that they need something like this. And so Steve in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, they're working on a business practice minor certificate so that anyone in any discipline at Lexington can go and get that practice. And we're talking about practice stuff like
Yes.
Yeah. Setting up an LLC,
Yeah.
registering the state, all this stuff. Yep.
All that stuff. So it's really going to be business.
It's great.
And
Would have loved that.
in fact, they will be piloting a course next year in small business management. So it's going to we help each other out. If one spread the word, we get that out. Give us a little bit of time and so we know that. But the other thing is, what you were talking about, I'm sorry, not your name.
Cicely.
Is that it's let that 18, 19, 20-year-old know that you think about this right now. You don't think about this in years. So you have an opportunity to learn some of this stuff now, but Leslie's already offering now, you need to take advantage. And everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Half of us know how to spell it. Half of us know how to actually be it. And so that lived experience, I think that we can create this community, this symbiotic relationship between our alums and our current students and the practices that we develop in community at Leslie, that we can actually help each other break the influence. And so don't be surprised, you have all you need to know. We actually did with just us.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question. What that looks like, because you're out in the world, you started your work and you decide that you want to do this. Then how do we structure it so that it's really easy for you to access it? And it may be different things to do, right? Because first you have to set it up, then you have an employee, also you have to do all that stuff, etc. What would be the best way for us to think about that and what does it look like? It doesn't, you don't care at that point about the conventional, right?
Yeah.
You care about getting the information. How do we do that best for you?
I think one idea that I have, I think we've kind of already talked about it and Cicely brought it up too, in terms of like mentorship of just making alumni
Yes.
mentors, right? And having a group of people that we can get compensated for, potentially. But just having like a directory of alumni who are willing to engage in a mentorship style program so that when graduates are looking for, hey, I want to open up my own mental health firm. Oh, John's done that. Can access John and can sort of run through what that might look like in terms of, here are the things to think about, here are the things to not think about, and just having an actual person, like a connection of a person. It would be on the student or the recent grads to like do their research and read books, but also be guided by the mentor. Like this is really important information that you're going to want to know that can sort of like help and foster that growth for them. can be thinking and teaching them about like what networking events should you be thinking about going to? How do you spread your information the right way? What CEUs are good for you? What CEUs are bad? Like just giving them good guidance on where they can be doing, fostering their professional goals. What does that look like? Both personal and professional. How do you go about doing those things? I think that would be one idea that I think would be really valuable. And I think, to my knowledge, no other school has something that's like that. Of like when graduates graduate, of like, hey, you guys have access to this mentorship program. Here's a directory of people from Leslie who would do that. That was one of the other main reasons I came to Leslie, was because of the alumni. It was expansive, really, really fruitful, and that's why I wanted to come here, because I knew I would be able to have access to people afterwards. But I don't think there's any formalized way to do that yet.
Yes.
So that's very interesting for MFA students. Every term, we have to find an outside studio mentor. And the list is, I don't know, really 8 pages long or something, right? And what the issue is, I really think is the issue, is our faculty members, a lot of them are not local. So they don't really know, they are not in the, after we graduate, they're not in the social media realm. They have their own side. Oh, this is faculty from NYU. So they have their own booth. They don't know our work. Cicely is going to be ICA in August. It's really a big deal. I'm not as close to her, but I have work at Smithsonian this August as well. This is just like, we're doing the best we can, but our faculty at MFA don't know our work. And I would love to be a mentor. I did it once after graduation because the students saw my work when I was still a student. But ever since, no one have referred it to mentorship. I'm local.
Okay.
So I think that's very critical because our faculty don't know our work and we couldn't get involved in the student body. And we would love to contribute.
Okay.
Hey, can I ask a follow-up question? So one of the things you want is just really practical information. How do I file an LLC? How do I set all these things up? What does that look like if we're helping you with that? In other words, like, is that a Saturday session where you come and do nuts and bolts of setting up a business?
Yes.
Is that the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
It's
It's a Saturday, you come in.
Just online.
I think it could be online. I did, it's called Optima. I took a business course. I took a business course right after graduation. That summer, it was 8-week course. It was through Optima, which is like nationally based. I got a scholarship to do it because I was like, I have no money. But it was every week and it was 4 hours. And then we were on Zoom, but it was helpful. And you have a mentor, there were 2 mentors and there's 4 people in the cohort. We held each other accountable by doing all the assignments and then practicing that, but I think something like
So
that.
the cohort aspect of that is something too.
Community,
Yes.
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 How do we bring it together?
yes.
And is it important that they be in the same field, or would all of you like to be in the same thing together and maybe not?
I think it was great to, sorry.
Mhm.
Things to say. To not be in the same field was great. I was the outlier, because people were like, what are you doing with art? Why are you here? And it's all relevant if you're an entrepreneur, so.
I was just gonna say that I'm more interested at this point in my career. I've been in education about 20 years. I'm going to be exiting being a superintendent of my school community and going into a more entrepreneurial pathway, which is going to be interesting. But over the course of the last few months, I've been participating in like masterminds. And so masterminds is just I'm trying to figure out how do I dial this into something that seems very tangible. But no matter where you are in your journey, you get what you put in and also what can you contribute back to the greater group. There's in generally masterminds are community driven. So it is a cohort of folks who have questions that they're trying to navigate for themselves. but it's based on themes of things for the week. So you have an expert or experts for the week that focus on how do you set up your LLC and make sure that that's official. You have some folks who might be doing sales and how do you set up your infrastructure. A couple of things that I've been focused on is social media and how do you flip a client to actually becoming a client and not just a perspective. And that requires a lot of psychology, sociology, a lot of patience and grit, because you don't, just because you're a great face and you know how to get people to laugh does not mean that that translates to you actually getting sales and things like that. Some folks are working on templates of content that they want people to digest and consume and take on. But each person, no matter what is their field, we're all connected to, like, we're trying to build out, you know, our own space and sphere. And then you can build community amongst one another, but you also get the thing you feel you need. And you never know, depending on the way that it's structured, you could be the expert that day on this is what I'm learning about this facet of my work. And so like one of the pieces of feedback that I got in the last conversation I had was just that my social media or my website is not reflective of who I am now. And so when people were looking at the website, they were like, Craig, you do all kinds of things, but what are you doing now? Like, how can you be value add to me? And someone asking that very pointed question, which seems very simple, but when you're in it, you don't know that that's how you're showing up in the world. And so it's really good that some folks who were not even in the sphere of education saw it and was able to call it out. So if Leslie created communities of practice or some type of, you know, entity where maybe it's 4 weeks, it could be virtual, it could be hybrid, it could be whatever, I think it could be value add.
You had a question.
You had a question. No, you had your hand up.
My name is John, president of the Alumni, right? So, John, I remember you speaking in my very last class for the.
Yeah, you guys can't get rid of me. I told you guys, you call, I call.
The piece of which you're all talking about is the president that came before me was really talking about, which was how do we integrate mentorship as a part of the alumni experience, right? And recognizing now more than ever, time is current, right? How much am I getting out of what I am putting in, right? It is reach one, teach one, but it's also reach one, teach one, and how is this benefiting me outside of just this philanthropic giving back to those who are coming up behind, right? The reality of what we're living now is you have a workforce and a growing network of scholars who are going to come into the work field and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Who am I going to look to? I know people did it before me, but how do I get connected, right? And a part of the work is understanding how do you create that connection? How do you create that directory? How do you create that network, right? And do you rely on the university to do so, or do you connect alum with alum to do that work outside of just that, right? And that's the piece of it. I think it's a yes and. And I think what I'm hearing from each of you is each of you are connected in many different ways, right? In the MFA program. I'm thinking about the fact that who do I know from an MFA program now? And are they represented on council? That's where my mind. What level of representation do we have if I'm the president of a body that's supposed to be representative of this 90,000 plus alum? And I don't know who our alum are from the MFA program or low residency program. All of those pieces are important. But somebody made this point, Lucy, you made this point yesterday. Sorry, I'm gonna put you on fire. You made the point yesterday of in the experience, you can feel as though you're in silence. Right? Doing this work within your field, yet how do I branch out of that? How do I get into something else that's going to allow me to project myself and the person that I'm with into the next stage in their development, right? Working with somebody who was a business major to say, hey, I'm going to work with this person who has this knowledge about what it is to register an LLC, what it is to make sure that I'm talking to insurance companies so I know how I'm billing properly, but also making sure that I can bill and not doing anything ethically illegal, right? All those pieces matter. And I think that having to everyone here, one is powerful because it speaks to vast levels of experience across multiple modalities. Two, the area of possibility, right? Every single person here has their own experience. And what is that going to look like if the next generation goes, hey, there are these people that had this experience. They had to learn from somewhere, right? What can I take away from this person? And what can this person, I move away from the idea of a transaction, right? That I'm getting something from you and more something that's communal, right? It's a giving of, and I'm getting something from this as well, right? It's a give and give. It can't be a give and take. If it continues to be a give and take, we're gonna continue to take until we can, until we no longer take, right? But once I learn something, what am I giving back after I've learned that? Who am I giving that to? How am I creating those circles so that way it does come back to you, right? That way it is beneficial to you, not only in just, oh, I feel good that I did this, but hey, this is gonna bring me another layer of business. This is gonna bring me another funnel of individuals that are gonna come to me because they know I know how to do this. And this is also something that I can market as myself, as something that I now know how to do. Oh, I know how to do this, and I've done this, wait a minute, now I can market this to another business, right? So there's a ton of layers to this work. And I'm glad that everybody is sitting in these chairs today because it's just as important that we continue this conversation. I've been here for years. I got here 2014, it's 2023. I graduated last year. One thing that I've continued to say is that we have conversations and momentum after we have that one conversation, and we don't come back to it. It's being captured right now. Everybody in this room is hearing. Everybody in this room knows that that's being said, right? We have to do something about it. We can plan it, we can talk about it, we can create these actions that we have to take actions in order to capitalize on the moment.
Well, we're doing it here today. Yes. I want to be respectful of the panelists. I think we're at time. Are we at time? Okay. So any other questions? Sorry, just to pivot. If there's other questions from the deans, Dana, Deanna, Steve.
Really for students who are currently in our program and wanting to become teachers, we know that they bring a lot of passion to that. And they get into that classroom and that first year we know is tough. Really, really tough. And so having that community of support during that first year is really, really critical. How did you find that? How did, in that first year, it's for all of you, I guess, because we could talk about mentorship, but in each year that you're out of Leslie, that changes, your needs change. But I really want to focus on that first year, because that first year, we know the research shows it, we all lived it, it's really, really tough. Where did you find the support, and what did you need in that?
Do you want to start?
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I can't remember back 50 years. You didn't have support. Your support were your friends. We were all teachers because we didn't have a lot of choices. You were a teacher, many of us were first generation college graduates. So we came together and we were friends, and most of us were teachers. To this day, most of my friends were at some form of education because that's kind of where we went in 1970. But so we talk about it with each other, but we had lives. Our parents certainly didn't help us. There was, they didn't care as long as you went to work, but it was tough. But we didn't have we had better coping skills. We were happy to get a job in 1970. There were not a lot of teaching jobs, believe it or not, especially in English. I later went back here to get my master's in special ed because that was the new field. You could go anywhere and get a job in a minute, and I did. But it was hard because you usually got the worst room in the building. You usually had the worst kids if they could throw them in your room, whatever it was. But I always had a sense of humor, and that saved me because we go home at night and tell each other, our roommates, the stories of the day. Some were horrible, some were funny, but I still remember all of them because they were hysterical in retrospect. But we had each other. We didn't have a network, but we didn't meet as much as kids need today or as adults need. And it's not just the first year teacher. It's the 10th year teacher. It's the 20-year teacher. It's the 30-year teacher. You're going to need those people. They're going to need I was offered my job and 20 other jobs when I retired. We were all on the jobs back. And we're like, are you kidding me? I'd rather go work at Macy's and go home at night because it was getting worse and worse and worse, tougher and tougher and tougher. But to a person, what we all liked the best about being retired was we didn't have to get up. And I always thought they should rethink how teachers are. Why do they have to teach all day? Why do they have to teach Monday through Friday? We wanted to job share. I'm a morning person. I can still get up in the morning and do anything. And I have friends who love being able to have the morning free. We said, gee, we should go in as a partnership and teach. And we have to rethink how we see education. But to go back to your question, there was no support system. And you got through it because you needed the job.
I would say what I'm hearing a number of the young teachers who I'm serving with right now is what is the level of additional support that one like Leslie could offer through mentorship, through here's the things we believe you might need for your day one. So before you start your class day one, teaching or whatever it is you're doing, we have a little care package for you. That care package comes with a little bit of a community. And a care package doesn't have to be like something, super expensive. It's just a way of saying, we see you and we value the fact that you're continuing in this journey, in this tradition, but building our community to say that, hey, we're going to have monthly check-in sessions where whatever problem or practice, whatever thing is creating that level of headache, just knowing that there are other people who you can check in with and know that that space was especially designed for you. And that if let's say Leslie had some type of, it doesn't have to be super expensive in regards to what you give back to whomever's facilitating or those who are facilitating those conversations or experiences, but being able to say, all right, we got an educator who just left here. We have a student who left here. Now they're going to Florida. Like, how do you equip someone who is currently in their program and finishing, and they're going to Florida, or they're going to Idaho, or they're going to Texas, and they're all the things that we've talked about and learned in Leslie. Now you're running up against a force field where you might not even be able to retain your licensure because everything that you've learned at Leslie to create nurturing, inclusive, welcoming environments, you are met with a political firestorm, and as a new educator, that's scary. And so I don't know what Leslie's currently doing. And so this is not me, I'm in no way saying you are or you're not. I'm just saying that I have a curiosity on, well, how are you creating community for educators who are going into the firestorm? They are committed to the work, but they also may need a sense of community to navigate the complexity. And so for some of us who've been around a while and have figured out how to navigate it, or at least just be brave harbor, at least saying, hey, Craig, can you serve as a facilitator and be like our monthly check-in person or create this? Like, I would be willing to do that, but I just need to know that I'm needed in that way. And so that would be something I would suggest.
Yeah, I would say for me too, like there was no support. I think that's something that we're all kind of hearing. I think especially in mental health, it's kind of like you're just released into the deep end. And just like good luck, and that's sort of how it felt. So that was one. I'd say for me, I kept my relationships with people from Leslie. That was like a huge component of what was important to me. I still periodically have group soup with some people that I graduated with 10 years ago, right? So I would say that was one of the biggest things. And back to what you were saying too, that there are alumni who are willing to put in some extra work for doing these types of things. I throw my hat into that, continuously throw my hat into that. I want to be that person to mentor. And so if Leslie's able to put some of these structures in place, and then you put it on the alumni to talk to the alumni, I feel like you would have a good reception of people who would be like, yeah, absolutely. I would gladly throw my hat in the ring and mentor. And I think because of all the things that we've talked about, especially, I can only speak to my scope of mental health, but it's not the same that it was 20, 30 years ago at all. Not only the client's different, but the work is different, the accessibility is way different. And so being able to have access to people who have understanding of that is like huge. And we are wanting to, for me personally, part of the mentorship part is, yes, I want to give back and I want to get back to a community that has given me so much, but I also want to educate new upcoming clinicians on like, what does the landscape actually look like nowadays? Because it's probably not exactly what was reflected in school. Here's what's really going down. And I want that opportunity. So, I mean, in terms of like what that other person can get out of that too, I think us having mentorship, teaching them like where the burnout factories, like don't go work here because they're just going to slam you with a million clients and not give you any supervision and they're going to kill you. Things like that I think would be huge. But to your point, I think it is a two-way street of if you guys create these types of programs for us and then be like alumni, who's up for it? You would get people, I could think of 3 or 4 people off the top of my head right now who I know would be wanting to come and do something like that. So.
That's wonderful. I do want to just spend like the last 3 or 4 minutes and not all of you need to respond, but we did talk yesterday about demystifying the narrative of your profession.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that was very passionate to many of you. So if you could
Yeah, I
just,
can speak on that with me. So you're hearing me too much today. I would say that one of the things, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier too, that one of the things that I grew up that kind of pushed me away from getting into the field, even though it was like a calling and continues to be, was this idea of like, getting into, social services or, profession of servitude that like, oh, you're going to live, on ramen noodles and you're going to be penny pinching and you're going to live this life of, dissolution and misery but good luck and you're going to love it, and I think educators in this room probably can understand that's what you heard, right? And while I don't think educators and clinicians are compensated for the life-changing work that we do, I do think that is still a problem. I also don't think that has to be the reality. And I think we really need to shift that narrative. And no one gets into this profession to make money, but I'm not a person to say that making money or to be comfortable or to be financially stable, that absolutely influences the work that you do. And if you're a clinician, especially, and you're worried about making enough money to support yourself and your family, that is going to reflect the work that you're doing with your clients. It is, and nobody is perfect. And that is going to happen. And so that's kind of what I was talking about before, of like building capacity or opportunity for people to learn how to be entrepreneurial is really important, and finding different avenues to do that. So whether it's consulting work, I wrote a book a few years ago, doing mentorship or doing supervision, or there's lots of ways in which that we can diversify the way that we're supporting ourselves as clinicians. And that type of stuff is not taught. And I do still kind of hear the narrative of like, well, you're going to suffer, but you'll be helping people. And I hate that narrative, and I hear it all the time. And I just really want us to work against that. So that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
From the artist.
I would say, what was the question? Demystify.
Like how to redirect the narrative.
Yeah.
If you could be speaking to even, a larger students graduating, what is the narrative that you want them to hear?
Don't, no, I want to reverse that. Divest from the belief that you have to suffer to do what you love. That you're alone. I'm not gonna look at you or anybody so I can think. That there's always someone that's there to help. Reach one, teach one is really important to me. The very beginning question I didn't answer, and I was like, I really want to say this. But there was a moment, Mark Handelman was one of the lecturers, and he said, you have a moral imperative. Like, what's the moral imperative of your art? Which that can mean a lot of different things, but I think that's always stuck with me is you have a gift. We all have our gifts and our talents, and our moral imperative is to share them and to give, because you ultimately receive. So just keeping that as your core focus, not doing anything for money, knowing that there's money everywhere and it will come, but just to have faith, I think is it. And know the people that will help you will come, and to receive them, to be open to receiving them, and to really ask for help. And if you're in a position to help another person as an alum, whatever, or just in your job, to go to someone else and be able to extend that to them. And that's really what lifted me up. And that it's really hard. And I have cried myself to sleep many nights, or woken up in the middle of the night, totally freaked out. Like I have no idea what's going to happen. And because the road is it's not narrow or straight for artists.
but to remember that our gift is to be creative and inventive
Yeah.
and innovative. So a way will be found if you're willing to keep showing up, and something like going to the business course is counter to doing art because artists don't really want to have to think about these things, but we do. So I did that, and through that I met really interesting people, and they're coming to me asking for help and things. I don't know about cooking, but it's more like the moral support. Like, I believe that you can do this. Keep going. I know that something is telling me that I can do this. Keep going. And remember that community is everything, and it is what gets us to the next step.
100%.
But I don't know how to say, like, to give the key. I don't have the key other than you have to show up and keep doing what you love, and the door will open.
Great. That's wonderful. Well, I think we could close on that. That's a beautiful, thank you, sincerely. And just thank you all very much. The discussion was rich, and I look forward to more conversations moving forward. We'll get this mentorship thing moving. And again, just thank you for your generosity and support for Leslie and for each other. Thank you.